So this is going to be a quick tour of the Ricoh GR10, which is a really wonderful film point and shoot camera. And we're going to be going over how to take it apart, which is surprisingly easy just to get access to what's right behind the panels. Um, and we'll be going over the most common problems that I've seen with this camera that are easy enough to fix that I thought it was worth making a video for. So all we need to open up this camera is a little JIS or Phillips head screwdriver, which I have here. And we've got screws on the bottom, screws on the side here. There are screws in the battery compartment and screws here in the film compartment. But before we do anything, we've got to remove the battery. And so first thing we're going to do is remove the battery. And real hazard with working on these cameras with built-in flashes is you can shock yourself on the circuitry if the flash capacitor is charged. And the flash capacitor, you should assume it is charged unless the camera has been sitting without a battery in it for like weeks and weeks. I would just generally assume that the electronics are energized even when the battery has been removed, and to take the right amount of care. Probably the safest thing would be to use some kind of high voltage insulating gloves, which I don't have. So I'm just going to be holding the camera in ways where I don't touch any of the circuit boards, and you'll see that's not that difficult to do with the GR10 because of how it's designed. So in any case, accounting for that, let's take this camera apart. So we're going to remove the bottom front plate, which includes the sort of hand grip, and we'll end up removing also the sort of the door on the side here. And you can actually take all of the plates off to service the camera without removing either door. These can kind of stay hinged. So to start, we remove the 4 screws on the bottom. And then the 2 other screws holding the plate in are in here behind where the film would go. And so the top one also frees off this clip that sort of keeps the film canister in place. And then the bottom one is just going through to the grip. And then the last screw is in the battery compartment right here. So we've removed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 screws. And this one might not come out easily, but just turn it a while until it's loose, and then it's no longer keeping the plate on. And at that point, you can open up the film door and sort of run your fingernail along the bottom. And if it's the first time you're opening the camera, there might be a little resistance, so you can apply the force kind of upward. You know, don't force it, but you should feel some and hear some clips kind of unclip, and then this whole plate comes right off. And now I'm holding the camera with the top plate and this bottom plate here. So we're not touching, the flash capacitor over here, which is a 330 volt capacitor that you want to assume is energized. We're not touching any contacts over here, even though I think most of them are not high voltage, but we assume that any contact could be high voltage. And don't assume that just because a circuit board is not near the capacitor or near the flash that it's safe. You have to assume that any of the boards could be unsafe to touch. So we can just kind of hold the camera by the edges or by the metal plate here, but I would avoid touching these contacts. And as long as you handle the camera carefully, you should be fine. So now that we have the front and bottom plate off, we can talk about one of the common issues that I've seen in the Ricoh GR10, which is the lens barrel will not extend. And that was actually happening with this specific camera when I got it. And I noticed that when you press the power button, the gears would, so these gears are all involved in the lens barrel opening and closing. I noticed the gears would try to turn and they would bind, and then after a second or two, it would give up to avoid burning out the motor from stalling. And I found that I was able to clear out some pieces of dust from between the plastic gears just with tweezers. And eventually, I cleared out some important pieces of dust, and the camera just started working perfectly again. So if you have a Ricoh GR10 where the lens barrel has stopped extending, you might be able to fix it this way. It might have just been that a piece of sand or a piece of dust got stuck in these gears and it's causing them to bind. So you can test this part without actually energizing without putting the battery in by just turning the belt with your hand. And if you turn it, counterclockwise, you see that the barrel kind of starts opening in slow motion because you're running the whole gearbox through the sequence of opening the lens. And if you turn it clockwise, it will slowly close. And so in this way, you can kind of cycle all the gears. You can see the gears turning. I'll zoom in for that. You can see the gears turning, and you can sort of, we need to turn counterclockwise now. And you can sort of clear out little pieces of dust that show themselves in all of the teeth here, and it'll take the longest to see all the faces of this gear and the other slow turning ones. And you want to take a lot of care here, but little metal tweezers applied gently are perfectly good for sort of clearing out these channels. I am superstitious about using something like a solvent here, but you might be able to. But I just sort of cleared everything out with tweezers here. So that's one problem that you might be able to fix very easily by simply opening it up and kind of, running some tweezers through the channels of these plastic gears. And then another related problem, if your film advance isn't working or if it's loud or makes clicking sounds, it's these horizontal gears that are spinning here. As I turn this, you can hopefully see them moving. Those are the film advance gears. And over here, this is also film advance, either film advance or rewind. All of these gears in this direction control the film advance and rewind. And sometimes they can get sand or dust stuck in them too. And so you can kind of do the same exercise of turning them manually and clearing out any pieces of junk that you see in the gears. And I've removed clicking sounds from the winding mechanisms of Ricoh GR10 cameras doing this. So let's go ahead and close up the lens. And next we'll take off the top plate. So if you were going to do an LCD repair, and the LCD on this particular camera barely works at all. If you were going to do an LCD repair, you would need to remove the top plate. So to remove the top plate, once we've gotten the front plate off, and you do need to remove the front plate to remove the top plate. So the next thing is to take off this screw and a screw over here, and there's a screw on the other side too. So again, take care to avoid touching the camera near the capacitor or on any of the orange circuit boards and flex PCBs here. So once you've removed this, this plastic piece will pop out, and there is a little rubber piece, which is the rewind button, that will probably fall out of place. So take care not to lose it. I'll show you what that looks like. But we need to remove one more screw. So I'm carefully flipping the camera around, and this screw here, the underside of the battery compartment, or I guess the top of the battery compartment, remove that. And now you can sort of pull back the plastic cover for the upper part of the grip, which is also the cover for the date display. I'm not sure if all GR10s have the date display. And also a lot of this might apply to the GR1 as well. I just have never had a GR1 to do any of these repairs on. Another very common problem is this clear plastic LCD display guard will fall out because the adhesive fails. I've seen this on almost every GR10 that I've looked at. It'll just be kind of flapping around in there. You can very easily superglue this back. So once you've gotten to this point, that's a very, very easy repair to do. So put that aside. And you can sort of lift the top plate off gently. And here's the top plate. So here we have the infamous LCD, and LCD repairs are beyond me right now, but oh, by the way, this is the rewind soft rubber piece, which will probably fall away when you take the top plate off. So just keep that. You'll need to kind of carefully reinstall it when you are putting the GR10 back together. So LCD repairs are beyond me, though if you want to attempt one, now's your chance because you have access to everything. But what I do see often is top plate misalignment that either makes it so the buttons here don't work, or that the LCD is not properly aligned below this viewing window. And you can sort of fix the LCD, and sometimes LCD alignment I think might cause top plate, LCD misalignment might cause top plate misalignment. So there's this sort of clear yellow plastic clip that positions the display, and this whole thing is kind of remarkably like mushy. It's not the greatest. There's a lot of flex here, so I can see how these would fail over time. But you can sort of reposition the display in the clip by moving it around, like with tweezers, gently, trying not to scratch it. And then once you kind of get these, the two posts here aligned in the sort of aligning clip, then you can attempt to reinstall the top plate, hopefully with the proper alignment, so that you get a nice click action on all three of the buttons. If your shutter release is not working, it's fairly easy at this point to replace it, or you can take this out and sort of unbend or rebend the spring. I guess I can just demonstrate that quickly. The shutter release button moves like this, and there are two clips here that keep it in. So if you kind of press it and, well, actually, no, you don't press it. You just push the clip in and push the other clip in, and then you can poke and it comes right out. And very, very simple. There's a spring that sits like this, I think. Actually, maybe it sits the other way. There's a spring that might actually sit like this. This makes more sense. Clearly, you can install it either way. Spring sits like this, so if you want, you can sort of rebend these legs out more to increase the spring tension, but you want to be really careful because you can break this thing and then it's going to be a pain to find a replacement. And then, once you've done that, you can kind of carefully position it so that these two sort of smaller positive clips are in the right orientation, and then you can put it back like that. Great. You can also clean the top cover, sort of wipe off the insides that might have been, touched by a previous repair. Make sure that everything moves smoothly and there's no sand or dust in here that could get somewhere worse. And then when you're ready to put it all back together, you need to remember to replace this little rubber button piece. So the way I like to do this is to hold the camera. So this, the sort of nub that's sticking out goes down here into that kind of slot. And your positioning doesn't need to be perfect, but you want to get it like there. And then, again, taking care to hold it only by safe places. I think I've found it's best to, put this plastic piece back first, and it just kind of rests into place pretty easily without needing to, apply a lot of pressure. You can close the door to make things easier at this point. And then take the top cover and sort of bring it down from this end. And then once it's down here, you can go back to horizontal, and if everything goes well, it just kind of goes back into place, just like that. And then here's where you can check if all your buttons click nicely. So we still need to apply some downward pressure here to keep the top cover on. So let's put the screws back to get the top cover back on. So sort of pushing down here, put the screw back in. And that's the main one to keep it from flopping around. Then we can put this screw back in on the side. And we can sort of replace this side guard here, which you can just kind of turn it in. It doesn't feel great, but it does eventually just kind of go in there. And now you can go back to that underside and replace that screw. So one word for anyone who is attempting an LCD repair, or any kind of repair where you might want to energize the camera while it's partially disassembled. I was working on one of these cameras with the battery in and the top plate off, and the some part of the flash circuitry started to smoke and burned out, and the flash stopped working. So I became superstitious that the top cover being off while the camera was on with the battery in was the cause of that, but I'm not sure. So I would caution you to only turn the camera on with the top plate on, even though I can't think of a good design reason why that would be required. I just want to caution anyone doing these repairs that you might not want to turn the camera on with the top plate off. And to be fair, it's kind of hard to, I don't know how to turn on the camera without this rubber button here to press anyway. So I think you're going to have the top plate on to turn the camera on, but I would just say don't take the top plate off while the camera is on, or even while the battery is in the battery compartment, for that matter, at all. So now we can continue just reassembling the camera. So now we can put the front and bottom plate back on. So that plate just kind of goes on here. You can let it rest. Make sure the tripod socket isn't getting in the way. You're going to need to kind of push like this way a little bit to get it there. And then from this corner, you can just sort of push it in and push it in here, and then you can kind of go around and it'll all click in nicely, and then it should all be, the body panels should all be flush. And at this point, all you need to do is put all the screws back in. So the 4 on the bottom. One screw here. The long black screw on the bottom. And this clip, which goes back in this position. You can sort of reinstall it partially, and then, yeah, just like that. And that's it. So despite being a very sophisticated, modern point-and-shoot film camera, it is very easy to take apart. It only requires a Phillips screwdriver, no weird spanners or really much application of force or any special bits or anything like that. And that's that. So that's how to disassemble the GR10 and how to address some of the most common problems, which are the lens barrel won't extend or the film advance is loud. And that's it.